In my previous video review about this Nikon Z 24-70mm kit lens, I shared my experiences and impressions of using this lens for 4 years, how it is built, how it is handled, and in this video I would like to share some examples of images demonstrating the optical aspects or peculiarities of this lens, how it performs, and we will cover such things as flares, how they change with the different focal lengths, chromatic aberrations and fringing, the abilities for close-up or macro photography. Definitely it is not a macro lens, but how much subject reproduction you can get at different focal lenses. Also, I will show you briefly the speed of autofocus. I will demonstrate the impact of the lens hood or the lens shade on the amount of the vignetting, and I will demonstrate the amount of the vignetting on different focal lenses and with different apertures. And lastly, we'll talk of course about sharpening, and for wide angles 28 and 24 I will demonstrate both corner examples, how it distorts the subject in the corner, and center of the edge. And for longer 35, 50 and 70 I will focus on the longer edge, because center of the frame itself is always super sharp at different apertures. And for the 70mm, which could be used as the portrait one, I will show you, besides the 100% crops, I will show you the scaling to 200 and 400% to demonstrate how minute details such as hairs are depicted in the portrait photography. Now we'll talk about the flares or the ghosting in the images at different focal lengths and different aperture values. And as you see in photography, only at widest angle they are somewhat visible, and the closing of the aperture not drastically changes the flare amount, as opposed to other optical problems like vignetting, sharpness or depth of field. In video it is much easier to demonstrate, because I can rotate the camera and show you the exact spot at which the flare appears, but I need to know that even without the lens hood it is not very prominent, and you need to be at a very specific point towards the bright object to get this flare. This is the demonstration of star effect at closed f16, although I don't shoot usually at that closed because the diffraction kicks in at around f11, but as you see, even at wide angles it is very prominent and beautiful. And of course sun is not the best subject because it is behind the bright sky, but in the night when you have some lampposts or other artificial lighting, the starring will be very prominent and beautiful against the dark backgrounds. Here I show the so-called macro, or better to say close-up capabilities of this lens, and also you can evaluate how Nikon Z6 image stabilization works, because this lens of course doesn't have optical stabilization. This mosaic demonstrates how much of the subject you can get at minimal focal distance at each focal length. So this lens doesn't have this effect when your maximum reproduction ratio is at some ambiguous point between the zooms, and it is strictly better at the longest length, giving you the best reproduction and filling the space of the image with the biggest portion of your subject. So if you need to have any close-ups, just zoom straight away to 70mm. Here I tried hard to find any spot to show you the chromatic aberrations or the fringing effect, and as you can see it is absent even in most toughest conditions when the sun is just behind our subject, the thin leaf. And it just shows how well modern lenses are corrected and adapted for the digital photography. Here, at the widest angle where vignetting is most prominent, I wanted to show how the blend affects the amount of vignetting on the subject in the shade, and as you can see it doesn't particularly have any difference using upper row with blend or bottom row without blend. The vignetting is the same, and as expected, the closing down the aperture fixes this issue, although I need to say, like, it is much easier to fix it in Photoshop. This is just the comparison of vignetting at maximum aperture at different focal lengths, and I still didn't figure out why on the 70mm it is darker than at 50. It shouldn't be that way, but up to that point you see the gradual decrease of the amount of shade in each corner of the image. This is the demonstration of autofocus speed, and in my point of view it is super fast. This video demonstrates the amount of focus breathing at the longest focal length, and to my view it is non-existent. And this is demonstration of focus breathing at the widest angle. Also, I don't see any problems. And now we'll talk about sharpness. Here is 2 rows of images at 24mm. The upper row is the 100% crop from the top left corner of the image, and the bottom row is 100% crop from the center upper edge of the image. So as you can see, at widest angle the corners are somewhat distorted, and that is why I don't like wide angle lenses for portraiture of groups of people, because the faces of the people near the edges, near the corners of the frame will be always stretched so wildly, and that's why I suggest better zoom in. If it is possible, use like 35mm, or not place your subjects near the edges of the frame. At 28mm the stretching in the corner is less prominent, but still pretty much visible, and if you have any good feelings towards the people put in the corner, don't put them in the corner, because they will still be somewhat stretched. And in the center of the upper edge everything is fine. For 35 and 50mm I didn't use a corner, they are not distorted at all, so nothing to see there special as on the wide angles, and I will remind you that these are like 100% crops if you're watching this in 4K. Comparison of portraiture at 70 and 50, unfortunately these are 100% crops, so I didn't match them properly in terms of scale. So at 50 it is a bit more stretched than at 70mm, but perfectly fine, and you can evaluate the amount of background blur using this lens. And this is the demonstration of sharpness at portrait length for the 70mm. At the left column there's images at 100% crop with different aperture values f4 and f5.6. If you need a little bit more depth of field, and in terms of sharpness I don't see any noticeable improvements in closing the aperture from 4 to 5.6, except for the case when you're talking about 400% or 4 times the zoom or stretching of the image, because the middle column is twice as wide and twice as tall as the 100% zoom in leftmost column, and the rightmost column is 4 times the width and 4 times the height of the original image stretched in Photoshop. And you can see even at this scale and amount of magnification it is still pretty nice and rendered sharply, even in the minute details of my hair. Thank you for watching this detailed companion video to the first one, where I gave you the general overview of the lens, its performance. I think these examples should answer any questions or doubts you have about this lens. As I said, I think this is a great travel, lightweight lens, compact one, and a no-brainer option for the general stuff photography you need as a kit lens before you find out which special subjects you need to cover, and those subjects of course will need special lenses. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Vsevolod, and I was happy to see you on my channel. Hope you'll come again. Please subscribe and share this video with your friends. Have a nice day. Bye bye.